Hello and welcome to the live podcast, Win More on Purpose. Today we have Eliav Friedman with us on the work-kid balance. How do I balance my children's needs with my business's needs? The agenda, for those of you who are new, we're going to be having a conversation. Me and Eliav, we're all here learning together. Write down your questions. There will be a Q&A at the end, and you should stay tuned because there will be a special offer at the end as well. As we are live, you can put into the chat and let us know where you're coming in from today, a little bit about yourself, perhaps what it is that you do. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Yaacov Steinberg. I'm a sales coach for 5 years full-time now. And I noticed when I first went into the coaching space that people were able to build 6-7-figure businesses on their own. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. Some point along the way, they learned how to speak to people, but they hit this glass ceiling somewhere along the way, either because they were making it up as they went along and that'll only get you so far, or they didn't want to be the stereotypical used car salesperson. Sleazy, pushy, really even pushing people to buy things they didn't need. And that's where I came into the picture. Mindset, technique, skills, really helping people to have the confidence and clarity to know who they needed to speak to, where to find them, what to say to them, and how to say it. Some of the people that I've been able to help that are pretty well known on LinkedIn, people such as Friedman, Eli Bosch, Hoodie Greenberger, just to name a few. And thankfully, the clients that have worked with me at the 6-7-figure realm have been able to grow by even 50% in the first 60 days of working with me. Clients at the 100K realm, give or take, have been able to grow by even 150% in the first 60 to 90 days. And solopreneurs just starting out have been able to grow by even 200, 240% in the first 45 days. Eliav, really excited to have you here with me today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get the show on the road.
Well, I don't know if I could do that quite as smoothly as you did. It seems like you've practiced this, Yaacov. That was amazing.
Just a little.
So my name is Elia Friedman. I am a clinical social worker living in Ramat Beit Shemesh in Israel. I have offices I have a home office as well as seeing clients in Jerusalem. I specialize in working with teens, though I also do work with adults. I do a lot of work with parents. Some of the teens that I'm working with and some otherwise, I've given parenting workshops. I've taught therapists about working with parents. Happen to also be the clinical director of an organization called Karen Ezra, supervise other therapists, supervise a bunch of students. I'm deep in therapy, let's put it that way. And one of my great passions is in really helping people to not need my services. Trying to help parents to be the best parents that they can be, which can mitigate often the need for therapy or sometimes even again, not always. Everyone has their stuff and everyone has their experiences, but good parenting can do a lot of really great stuff. And I'm not worried that I'm going to go out of business. So I'm happy to help as many people as I can to avoid needing the business, the help of somebody like me or somebody, me, my colleagues, people like us, etc.
Sure, absolutely. And knowing you personally, I've definitely seen that and experienced that even myself. And I think the first place to start for today's podcast would be the title of today's podcast, right? We named it The Work-Kid Balance. And I think that people are asking themselves, like, what does that even mean, work-kid balance? So why don't we start there?
Okay, that's a good question. It's a great place to start. And I think a lot of people talk about a work-life balance. Some people really like that term. Some people don't like that term. Some people are struggling with it. Some people claim to have mastered it. A lot of people have claimed a lot of things that are not necessarily true. That's next time we'll talk about that. I think the work kid balance is about, many of us are struggling. I think it might be more true of moms perhaps than dads, especially moms who are mompreneurs or solopreneurs. But a lot of people are struggling with that balance between how do I grow my business? How do I either be successful in business, be successful at my job, or even more so, grow my business when I'm the guy. And if I'm the guy, I got to be or the gal, and I have to be the one who's going to hustle. But I've got kids at home, and I really value being there for my children. I really value spending time with my children. They're the most important thing to me. And the balance is, so how do we balance those two things? There's a famous Yiddish expression that I'm not going to say in Yiddish. I'll just say it in English. That you can't dance at two weddings or sit at two weddings with one behind. It's very difficult to be in two places at once. And I think that all of us, to a greater or lesser extent, are experiencing that. So how do we understand what's going on? Because a lot of times we're making choices without realizing that we're making choices. Right? Not making a choice is also a choice. Allowing things just to flow the way that they're flowing, so to speak, is also a form of choice. And the question is, how do we align our values with what we're doing? How do we, okay, I value growing my business for whatever reason. I value it, whether it's for self-aggrandizement, it's for making a lot of money, it's for supporting my family, right? A lot of people are working because they want to support their family. I think it's a beautiful thing. But what do? Do I support my family financially or do I support my family emotionally? What's the cost? The famous stories about the people who climbed to the top of the mountain, but by the time they got there, they were alone because they had left their family behind. And everyone swears when they start out, they're not going to be that guy or gal. But I think it's really easy for people to fall in the trap. And I when I speak to my friends, I think it's something that comes up for people across professions. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you can be a therapist, you can be a sales coach, you can be a plumber. I think everyone is struggling with this to some extent.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that this idea that you brought up that I talk to people all the time about is you always have a choice. And anybody who says that you don't have a choice is ignoring the fact that, like you said, just not doing anything is also a choice. And I think one of the biggest aspects comes down to, like you said, it's the values that we have within the relationships that we foster, right? Is the value that I have in my business and the fact that I want to accomplish something more important to me than my relationship with my kids or my spouse. And I think that's something that we hear all the time, especially a couple of years ago before being an entrepreneur became even more popular, where a lot of people lost their families because they went down the road of being an entrepreneur. And then at some point their family said, we can't handle this. You're never around. They stopped putting in the hard work necessary into their relationships and they fell apart because when we don't do the upkeep necessary, then things start to crumble. And I think that comes down to, the values that we have, but I think there's also, the behaviors based on those values. And even I would say the priorities that we choose to put first or second.
Right. So that's exactly right. Values will inform priorities and priorities will inform behavior. So a lot of times there's a very interesting thing that I think many of us experience is that, a lot of us talk about things that are important to us. And some people will claim, I've heard people say this, I think, I'm not sure that I agree with it 100%. People will say, you claim that you value your family more than you value your business, but you spend 95% of your waking hours involved in your work and 4% dealing with yourself and 1% with your kids. So you don't actually value your children. And I think that's a little bit harsh and I don't think it's perfectly accurate. I think that it's entirely possible for a person to value something and to genuinely value it. And it's really important to them. And most parents I know would absolutely take a bullet for their child. And I don't think most people would probably not take a bullet for their work. Some people would. And maybe in some lines of work, that's what you do. You risk taking bullets. And I have a lot of respect for people. I have a lot of respect for, policemen and soldiers, etc. Less so for people who are on the other side of those gun battles. But which is, also risky. But I think you can have values, but your values should inform your priorities, but they won't always. Priorities is, I think, where a lot of people get stuck. Before we get to the behaviors, which will often be an outgrowth or an outcome of our priorities, I think we need to really understand how prioritizing works, because prioritizing, very often people make, I guess we'll call it a mistake. In that they're constantly focused on what's urgent rather than necessarily what's important. Meaning, because something is urgent, so there's this sense of it has to get done now. So a lot of people in all areas of life will spend most of their time dealing with things that are urgent and maybe not getting to things that are technically more important. That's one of the areas that people can make a mistake with their priorities. Going back to values for 1 second, I think a person needs to, you need to really sit with yourself and need to really understand, what are your values? Like, what's really important to me? What are the things that are important to me? And I would even put and why. Values, in a certain sense of value, is something that has value simply because it is. Right?
Okay.
So sometimes we will call something a value when that's not necessarily precisely the case, but it's important to me. It might even be a priority for me, but there's something which is sitting underneath that, which is really what's fueling that. For a lot of people, their children are a value simply because they value my relationship with my children is important to me because I love my children, or because I live within a culture in which children are our future, and they're the most important thing. I don't know all cultures in the world. I think there are some cultures that push that more than others. In some cultures, it's about really meeting children's needs, and some it might also be about meeting their desires, which may or may not be, in my opinion, a healthy thing. But a person spending some time really understanding what their values are, I think, will be the first step. Because a lot of times we're holding values, or we believe that we hold values, because of the culture around us, because of the culture in which we grew up in. And culture could mean the country that we grew up in. It could mean the neighborhood we grew up in. It could be if we're part of an ethnic group. You and I are both Orthodox Jews, right? So there are certain values that we just share because that's what we've been taught, and that will be run across all the many different cultures within Orthodox Jews. There can be many, 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 but there are a lot of things that run across all of them. So I think that what happens is a lot of times I'm giving lip service to a value, or I believe that I hold a certain value, but it may not really be mine, or it may not really be that important to me. It's very easy to become judgmental. A person really needs to know if a person genuinely values their business more than they value their children, that's their right. And if that's true, that will inform everything that they're doing. And that's from my perspective, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's okay. A person has the right to say that. Then you have to do a cost-benefit analysis, like in any business decision that you're going to make, or any important decision in life. Where is that going to take you? But there are people. There's the famous stories of the people who say, well, I can't believe I left my family behind. There might be other people who say, I can't believe I hang out with my family and I never became the millionaire I wanted to become. So I'm with my family and I'm poor and I'm miserable. There might be people like that. I don't know. Or there might be people who believe that would be the case. And I'm not going to judge that. But the first thing is to really sit with yourself and say, what are the things that actually matter to me? Not necessarily based on the way I'm behaving right now, because behavior can change. But based on...
Yeah, and I would say also that a lot of it has to do with the way that we think, meaning I could be at work and thinking about my children. And even if I'm not there, but that doesn't mean that I'm not having those behaviors that I want to have by thinking about them and being present of the fact that I'm sitting where I am because I'm doing something for them. Right. And that'll also change the fact that when I actually am in front of them, how I behave with them and how I interact with them and how they interact with me, knowing that information that they could call me. And, if I'm in a meeting, I'll say, hey, I'm in a meeting. Do you need me to step out? But that also goes to how do we interact with them when they call us and we're busy? Right. Sure. That's going back to what you said about behaviors. Right. If I'm in the middle of a meeting, I can say, I'm in a meeting. Is it an emergency? Or I could say, as my own coach says, I'm in a meeting. Do you need me to step out? Right? I'm making space for you, even though I'm making it clear I'm in the middle of something right now, but I'm still making space for you in that moment. That's a behavior that shows that you are a priority, even though I'm not sitting with you right now.
Sure, absolutely. And one of the things my children know, for example, I believe that they know, I'm pretty sure that they know. I have a rule. I don't generally call people back if they don't leave me a message. I try to tell people that to me, please, you can leave me. I'm old enough. There's a white. You can leave me a voicemail. If you don't have, if you prefer that or don't have the options of a text message or a WhatsApp or an email or whatever. The exception to that is my children will get called back as soon as I possibly can. All of my kids, my daughters, my sons, my son-in-law, they call me. They don't leave a message. I call them back, and right. They're the only people who are going to get a call back from me when they, it was a pocket dial. When it was an accident that they called me. And that's one of the ways that that it's an expression of how important they are to me, and one of the ways that I express how important they are to me. It's also possible, along the lines of what you're saying, for a person to say, yeah, the reason my career is important to me is because I'm doing it for my kids. Meaning there are a lot of people, life is expensive, and it's only gotten more and more expensive as I'm saying, any two breadwinners that bump into each other nowadays, there's about a 40-60% chance that at some point the conversation is going to get to inflation or to interest rates or how much more expensive life is. That's the reality of what we're dealing with right now. I think it's also, the shopper and the family, certainly they're feeling it. Saying, like, you're trying to live on a budget. We're all very much feeling it. But the reason that it's important, it could be lots of reasons. For some people, it can be very tied to their self-worth, and it's important for a person to at least know that about themselves. But I think it's also very much about, I know the reason I work so hard. Me personally, I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm not a fancy guy. I don't need fancy stuff. Now, I happen to have a lot more children than there are of me, right? So of course my kids altogether cost more than I do, but I'm pretty sure that I spend more money on each of my children than I spend on myself. I could be wrong. I didn't do it scientifically, but I'm a pretty simple guy. And like when I need something, sometimes I'll get it if there's money left over after I've taken care of my kids' needs.
Right.
So I'm not. Some people want to be wealthy. That's cool. I don't have a particular goal to be wealthy personally. The only reason I want to have money is because I'd love to be able to take care of my kids even more and meet more of their needs and be able to make things a little bit easier, not too easy for them, but a little bit easier for them. So if that's what's feeding your value or partially feeding your value of your career, that's also great. Then it's even more important to recognize that, okay, but then where is that? How am I prioritizing? Because what do our kids need more? That we're making more money or that we're more present for them?
Right.
And anyone who's listening to this or watching this and I need to answer the question for them, maybe we should talk.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, two aspects. I want to go back to something you said earlier, but I think one of the things is figuring out, what do my kids actually need? Right? Like, what do my kids need from me? Right? Is it money? Is it emotions? Is it me being there for them? Like, what do kids actually need? I want to talk about that. But I also want to get in, how does one actually take care of their kids? Because I think that those are two things that people confuse all the time.
Okay. So let's go with the assumption, for argument's sake. I mean, if you're asking me that question, what that's saying to me is I'm holding both of these values. It's important to me to either I need a job to live, right? Or I need this business to live, or I really want this business to be successful and I want it to grow. And therefore I have to dedicate a certain amount of myself, of my time, of my energies to it. But at the same time, my children are very important to me, or maybe even they're a priority to me. Like when I looked at my values, and my values were saying, okay, now if I really say that my children are more important to me than my business is, so that means I should be prioritizing my children. But what does that mean? Because, which is essentially what you're asking, right? What does it mean to prioritize my children? They're in school, right? They don't need me when they're in school, right? They don't need me when they're in bed, right? It's perfectly normal for me to be working 9 to 5 or 6 or 8 to 7. Every person, depending on what they consider normal. So great. Excellent. And I think the reason that's a little bit of a hard question to answer is when you're asking, like, what do my kids need? Every kid has different needs. Every kid has different needs. Roughly speaking, kids need to feel valued. Kids need to feel loved. Aside from taking care of their physical, right? We have physical needs. I would argue that we have spiritual needs. We certainly have emotional needs, right? So I'm assuming that we're taking care of our children's physical needs, that we're making sure that they're sheltered, that they are clothed, that they are fed, etc. As far as their emotional needs, again, different kids are going to be different in precisely what they're looking for. But kids need someone to listen to them. And here's the thing, which I think is really tricky, and this is where some people might struggle a little bit. Our children's primary caretakers should be their parents. That is the natural way. I mean, if you brought this child into the world and you were present in the early stages of their life, which I think most of us are to a greater or lesser extent, then they're already attached to you. You are that key figure for them. And that means that having someone else take your place, if that would be something you would attempt to do, can only go so far. It could be that if your child needs a tutor, hiring a tutor would be helpful. That could be. It could be that if your child needs someone to run around in the park with them, and that's really something that for whatever reason you're limited and you couldn't do, you might be able to find someone to do that. But they need a relationship with their parents. A lot of our self-worth comes from the way we believe that our parents feel about us. And I think this is an important point, so I just want to sit on it for 1 second. What a child thinks about himself is what he understands his parents think about him. Which means, if a child understands thinks that his parents think he's smart, then he will believe that he's smart. If he thinks his parents think he's dumb, he will believe that he's dumb. What his parents actually believe is not relevant. What the child believes they believe is what's relevant. If we keep telling our kid, oh, you're great, you're awesome, but we don't back that up with any type of action, if it's just empty words, then it's only going to go so far. If you tell your kid,
it's really powerful.
You tell your kid, you're the most important thing in the world. You're the most important thing in the world, and you're like, and the kid's like, I can't even get five minutes of your time. Then he doesn't feel like he's the most important thing in the world. Now, with that, I really believe, and I've seen a number of people that seem to be finding this balance. People that are finding the balance between growing their professional career and really having a beautiful relationship with their children and raising beautiful, not just beautiful souls in a beautiful way. I think it's because they've really honed in on the fact that it's really more about quality than quantity. And I don't know that my kid needs to spend 5 hours a day with me. I think what my kid needs is that when I'm with him, I'm with him. Especially as they get older. When they get older, they're going to be much more likely to express things either directly or indirectly. Yeah, it's how they feel about how we're doing. Like at a certain point, your kids start giving you a referendum on how good of a parent you are. Because teens have those, snide comments or those walk away, whatever, and I've definitely heard, oh, parenting expert, huh? Yeah. What I'm saying? Like my kids are not always impressed with everything that I'm doing, in every way. But what I found is that very often my kids can appreciate the fact that I'm busy and that I have a lot of things that are important to me that I'm trying to balance all of these things. Excuse me for a second. Sorry. I think my kids can appreciate that. But if when they come, I turn away from the screen, whether it's the computer screen or the phone screen, and I look at them and I make eye contact and I give them that time, it can make all the difference in the world. If when they do need more, I'm able to give them more. I remember one time witnessing such an interesting thing. It was actually it happened to be my mom's cousin. I was in synagogue one morning, and it happened to be I saw my mom's cousin there. Hi, and I see him go over to somebody. It's a Sunday morning, and I see him go over to somebody. It took a lot of guts to do this. And he said to the guy, he's like, "Listen, I apologize. You have every right to tell me to mind my own business. You have every right to. You could punch me in the face." He said, I just noticed that your son is on my son's, team or whatever they're like. I forgot it was a baseball team or basketball team, whatever it was. He's like, and I knew you're a busy guy. He's like, but every dad comes to some of the games. And I've never seen you at any of the games. He's like, and again, I apologize. I'm sorry if I'm overstepping my boundaries. But when all the dads are there and you're not there, I can see in your kids' eyes what that means. And I was like, ouch. Whoa, dude, you did that. I was kind of, I don't know the guy. So I was agreeing with what my cousin is saying, but I can't believe he had the cojones to call him out. You know what I'm saying? That was beautiful, but yeah, but and he did it so gently and he did it so respectfully, but he's making an important point, which is, is your kid feeling like he's the last one picked up from school every single day? Would it, what I'm saying? If there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. But if you're able to just make the pickup time earlier, even if you then need to go back to work, the kid might be able to understand that. When you're with them, are you with the phone or are you with the, I guess it's really about how we're setting boundaries, I guess is really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I have a paper on my bedroom wall right next to my bed. And I believe that it goes as follows. It says, when you yell and scream at your kid, they don't stop loving you, they stop loving yourself. I believe that's how the quote goes. I might be paraphrasing here, but it's the same idea as your child believes what they think you believe about them, right? Which ultimately breaks down, like you said, to this idea that when a child comes to ask you a question or they're saying that they want more time, how do you react to that? Right? And that's how they're going to reflect. Like, okay, an easy example, it could be because we were getting ready for the podcast, we were talking about the podcast. I told you this the other day, but I had a daughter. I'm making a party this coming week for my daughter who's turning 12. We would call a bas mitzvah. And we needed to write her speech, right? Time's getting closer. We kept trying to make time. It kept not happening. That's it. We got to make this happen. I said, look, let's do this on Tuesday. I happen to have a cancellation. I'm going to make this work. Let's do it on Tuesday. No, I can't. I have something I need to do. I said, okay, you let me know. If it works, great. Fine. I'm going to go to work. Don't worry about it. She calls me up. I came home. The other plans didn't work out. Can you come? I said, give me 10 minutes. I'll be there. Right? I took off an hour. I had a list of things that needed to be done, but this was a priority. And the amount that I saw in her eyes that this meant to her, and that she was able to see that she knows that I'm busy. She knows that I'm doing stuff and all that, but I took the time away, like I'm going to again tomorrow night, to spend time with that child because it's important. It's a milestone. It's a very big occasion. And there are some things that need to give in order for people that are close to you in your life to feel like they're important. Right. And like you said, I think that does come down to boundaries, which kind of really leads right into my next question, which is, what is the easiest way for people to understand how they can set the right boundaries? Because having boundaries is great. And I think we all have boundaries in some which way, shape, or form. Some of us have natural boundaries that we have, but are they the right boundaries? And I think that's the key.
If we know our values and we get clarity on our values and we know our priorities, we get clarity on our priorities, right? So now we know where we want to be putting things. It's very interesting. Most people will be very good in one of these two areas, either really good at keeping business out from family or keeping family out from business. And whichever one you're really good at, I would ask you to learn from that one and how am I going to do for the other one? So when my kids know, for example, I see clients in my office, which is in my home. So I actually have a door which leads to another door, close it. Yeah. And then it's actually also the safe room in the house. So it's more or less soundproof. My kids know that when that door is closed, they are not allowed to come into the room. They're not allowed to come into the room. They know that when the outside of those doors, when it's open, so it kind of blocks the view to my front door of my home. So when that door is halfway open, it means there's a very good chance that I've got a client coming in and out, and they're not even supposed to peek around the door. They're not supposed to see anything. So it takes time, but usually by the time my kids are by 4 years old, they got it. They have it clear because I've made it clear to them that we have to protect the privacy of my clients, and they have to respect that. So now, okay, great. So I'm really good at knowing how to carve out time for my business. I'm really good at knowing, listen, when I have a client sitting with me, I'm doing therapy. I can't answer the phone in the middle of a therapy session, right? Like it's not ethical. It's not appropriate. You can't do that, right? Okay. Will I refuse to answer the phone when I'm with my kids? When I'm spending time with my kids, whatever I'm doing with them, learning with them, playing with them, whatever it is, am I giving them that kind of, tunneled attention? I've recently been working on this also. I've got a daughter who's getting married in not so long, and that's gotten me thinking a lot about, okay, how have I done? She's about to move out of my house. Did I do a good job? Did I not do a good job? Please don't ask her. I think it's inevitable whenever something's coming to an end, so we start to look back and like, how did it go? Right? And she's going to continue to be my daughter. Please God, we'll see a lot of her. But she's moving out of my house now. For the first time, she's moving out. And she's moving in with a guy. I mean, she's marrying him. That's okay. I'm okay with that. And now I'm looking at different things. And one of the things that I've been doing more and more of is not leaving my office right when I'm done with my clients. Checking the things on my phone that I need to check, checking the emails I need to check, checking the WhatsApp I need to check, and then leaving my phone on my desk and going out to supper and just being present. I said hours. What are the hours I'm willing to see clients? One of the things that listen, it's hard when you're starting out. When I was a starting out therapist, I'm in private practice now for 14 years. Like, thank God I have a pretty established name. A lot of people, when people come, where have you heard about me from? A bunch of different places. Some people tell me, oh, I was referred to you by so and so. I don't know who so and so is. I don't know how they know who I am. It's a great place to be. It's a place I think everybody wants to be in business, where like people are recommending you that you've never even heard of. And thank God I've gotten there. But it used to be I would work all sorts of hours. I would see clients at 9:30 at night, until 10:30, and it's not unheard of in the therapy world. I would work Saturday nights, all sorts of crazy times. I've got my hours now, and yeah, sometimes people can't make it to me. Okay, it's one thing if you're full and you just have no space for clients. It's a beautiful place to be. But even if there is space, these are the times that I work. I really would need to come to you at such and such a time. 7 p.m. I'm done working. Some people might consider that too late. I'm saying, but like by 7 p.m., every day I'm done. I made an exception tonight. My good friend Yaacov. Okay, fine. I'm not working right now. I'm having fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not. But I am. I've made a decision. The door to my office is closed. You know what I'm saying? My kids know. They don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but they know they can't come in here right now. And I'll have to make it up to them afterwards. I'll have to make it up to my wife. I'll have to make it up to my kids. It's going to be a balancing act. That's something we need to know also. If we are going to steal time, so to speak, from our family for our business's sake, will we do it the other way? You did do that.
Right.
You stole an hour for your daughter to help her with her speech. You're going to steal a few hours to celebrate her bas mitzvah with her, and I think it's a no-brainer, right? I think it's obvious that you should do that. And there's going to be other things that are maybe not quite as like milestone, or life-altering events. So you still just say, today I'm taking time off, and this is what it's like when you're in the service industry. When you don't work, you don't get paid. So it can be a little bit hard sometimes. Like, I know how much money I make an hour, and I can't make that up because once that hour's gone, it's gone.
Right.
Yeah, but let me tell you, as somebody who's marrying off their second child, once they're gone, they're gone. Now they're not gone. They're still a part of our family, thank God, and we get to see them. But you don't get your kid's childhood back either. And that's not just the big stuff. It's also just having the opportunity. I had an hour today where I had a little bit of a break. And there were certain things I needed to get done that are not like fit into my regular schedule. And I needed to make sure I got them done. But I could probably get those things done in 20 minutes to half an hour. I went out of my office and just was hanging out. I was hanging out with my 2-year-old, hanging out with my 7-year-old, just being there, trying to help my wife get a gown on the 2-year-old to see what it's going to look like for the wedding. I was like, whatever exactly we were doing. But I made a decision. I have this hour. It's work time. It's within my work hours. It would be perfectly legitimate for me to stay in my office and just do what I'm doing. Yeah, I could do that. I could also go out, though, and spend some time with them. Also for my sake. For the relationship I have with them, for how much I enjoy that. What's the right boundary? Again, it's really hard to give a formulaic answer. Like, what's exactly the right boundary? What I can say is am I setting a boundary which is clear, which is fair, and which is sensitive? Right? The boundary can be clear and it can be firm, but is it sensitive? Meaning, am I... All rules are meant to be broken sometimes, right? I remember one time, I think one time we're going back 8 years, just about 8 years. My daughter's about to turn 8. My wife is at the very end of her pregnancy. And I'm sitting with a client, young man, 15, 16 years old. And usually my phone is face down on the desk. I just had this weird feeling. And so the phone was face up. And I hear it vibrate. And I turn towards my phone and I see that my wife is calling me from the other end of the apartment, right? And I look at the young man and I say, have you ever seen me answer the phone during a session? He's like, no. I was like, you know that I sometimes get calls. He's like, yeah. I was like, my wife is calling me right now. I think this might be really important. He's like, okay. I answer the phone. And my wife's like, I'm not sure. I think I might be having contractions. I was like, okay, I'm coming in 2 minutes. She's like, no, but I'm not sure. Maybe we should wait a little bit longer. I was like, I'm coming in 2 minutes. And I explained to the young man, so, we had a very brief conversation about it. And it was such a meaningful interaction for him and for him to see the way I was prioritizing my family. And we went to the hospital not so much longer, and my daughter was born. I think it was also just the right call. It happened to be. I mean, at some point she might have, called again or knocked on the door or whatever, because she could just walk over and be like, "Hello, we gotta go." You know what I'm saying? Like, she could have done that. But this was an opportunity for me to be the one to make that call, for me to be the one to say that I'm going to make. And there are exceptions to every rule. And again, as a therapist, that's very tricky. It's a much trickier thing for me to do as a psychotherapist than it is for you to do I imagine, as a sales coach, right? It happened to be that it worked out very well, that it was even therapeutic, and it was a great opportunity for the kid. His father even told me afterwards how impactful that was for him in a positive way. That's like, I look at that as like a gift that I got, that it was so impactful for him positively. But even if it wasn't, my family is more, I have clients who say to me, it's a classic question of a therapist, "You don't really care about me." It's like, you wouldn't be there for me like this. I said, "Listen, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't care about you as much as I care about my own children. I don't care about you as much as I care about my wife. I don't even care about you as much as I care about my close friends. I don't. That's true. I'm being perfectly honest. But I care about you. You're important to me. I invest a lot of time and effort and energy in trying to make sure that I'm giving you the best care that I can, and I'm helping you to grow in the best ways that I can. But yeah, you're right. You're not as important to me as some other people in my life." That's health. Those are healthy boundaries right there. Right? I tell my clients they can call me at 3 o'clock in the morning if they need me. And if it manages to wake me up, my phone, then because if you need me, then I'll be there for you. But ain't none of my clients climbing into my bed in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping, right? My kids do that sometimes. Right? So it's a question of, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a question of the priorities. If my married daughter would call me in the middle of the night, again, if the phone doesn't wake me, there's nothing I can do. But if it does, I'm up like this. "What do you need, sweetie?" I'll get in the car, you know what I'm saying, in my pajamas. "What do you got?" You know what I'm saying? Whatever you need. To be fair, I've had clients come in and met them in my pajamas. That happened once or twice. Because that's what they needed. It was the middle of the night and they really needed to come. So then we'll do that too. So boundaries is in general. It's about how do I set healthy boundaries that work for me, that prioritize my needs, right? Because my needs often have to come first. And it's how my priorities based on what my values are. I personally value my family more than I value my career. I do. I care very much about my clients. I invest a tremendous amount I really do. I invest myself in them very much. They're important to me. But they're not more important to me than me. They're not more important to me than my wife. They're not more important to me than my family. And I prioritize accordingly. I spend more time every day with clients than I do with my family. That's true. Yeah. Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, I don't see clients. I just do supervisions. Thursdays, there are more hours that are being dedicated to my clients than there are to my family as far as pure hours. That's true. But when there's a clash between them, I'm going to do whatever I can to see that my family will get what they need. And if I can't be present at exactly the time and the way that I would want to, then I'm going to do everything I can to try to make it up afterwards.
And I think it's interesting. One of the things that you pointed out, I mean, the idea of answering a phone, I'm going to talk about this one point because I have a couple of other questions and I want to make sure that we have enough time. But when that happens, right, if you're specifically not going to answer the phone, you could even make a thing out of it, right? I've had, I don't remember where this came from, but someone once said to me, if your phone rings when you're with your kid, look at the phone, look at your kid, and then turn the phone back upside down and say, "I'm not going to answer that. I'm spending time with you." Right. Because you're creating that moment. It's kind of what happened with you and your client in that sense. But like, it's not that nothing happened and I was just, I didn't have anything to ignore and to say, "No, I'm spending time with you right now." It's, "No, I'm prioritizing you, even though I know I have a phone call."
Right.
No. And that's an interesting thing that I've heard as well.
Beautiful thing to do. And what I'll do sometimes, if for some reason I need to take a call when I'm with my family, I apologize. I'm really sorry. I wish I didn't have to do this, but like this is something which these people are trying to reach me for 3 days. this is somebody who really needs to speak to me right now. I'm going to be back as soon as I can.
Right. And I think it breaks down to another aspect, which is, how do we know if we're meeting our children's needs? Right? Because we could set the priorities, which we've spoken about. We've spoken also about boundaries. We've spoken all these things, but how do we know if we're meeting their needs is one question. And a secondary part of that really is, are there particular signs that I should be looking for out, or I should be looking out for, I should say, in my kids?
Good, excellent questions. Excellent questions that can be a little bit hard to answer. How do I know if I'm meeting my kids' needs? It's much easier, I think, to know if I'm not meeting my kids' needs. That will sometimes be more clear. Everybody struggles in life to some extent, but like, how much is my kid struggling, and what am I doing to take care of them and help them with that struggle? I think this is a really, really important question. There's also a difference between struggle and suffer, right? If my child is struggling, so I need to try to figure out, okay, how much of this is something I can do about it, and how much is it just what he's going to have to work through in his life, and how can I help him with that? Not do it for him. Please don't do it for them. If they need a butterfly can only fly if it really worked really hard to get out of that cocoon. That's how it builds the muscles in its wings. Children need to go through struggles, but we can be helpful, and we can be supportive, and we can be their cheerleaders, and we can be there for them when they're having a hard time. Please don't do it for them. But if my child is suffering, if my child is facing a challenge that they cannot overcome, where am I? I got to show up now, right? You can't allow your children's emotional temperature to be, the gauge of how good of a parent you are, because emotions change all the time. They can change from minute to minute. But if my child is regularly really unhappy, if my child is regularly just like not happy in life, I need to check to see if there's anything I can be doing. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm failing on meeting their needs, but I need to check that. What does my child need from me right now? Does he need academic help? Does he just need more emotional support? Does he need me to get him? I've seen, I've had situations with my own kids. My kids are very into music, and I love it. I think it's a great outlet for them. It's really, really healthy, and they also happen to play really nicely, and I enjoy it very much. They, I need this guitar. I need this. I need that. It's hard to know, but I try to get a real feel, like, where is my child at? What are their emotional needs right now? What are they dealing with in life? Right? And how will this thing help them manage this? My son had one guitar, which was, $1,000, or $700, $800, $900, piece of equipment. And then he wanted another one that was of a somewhat equivalent price. This one's an acoustic and that one's an electric. And you know what? I think he needed it. I think, this one needed, yeah. Now we're buying a saxophone because I think that that's really what's best for that child. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's about money, right? Sometimes it's about our time. Sometimes it's about our attention. Sometimes it's about us learning how to work on ourselves. Yeah. Which is maybe a whole nother conversation. So it's hard to know. I mean, there are times where it seems like our kids are doing okay and there's stuff going on underneath the surface that we don't know. Which is why I think it's important to be available. Like, our kids are not always wanting to talk, but there needs to be time that we're available. At least one parent who's just around, or they know when they're around. Or, my son who's now away studying, he's not that far away. He's in Jerusalem. I'm there once a week. When I'm done seeing clients there, I drive over to where he is, and we spend time together. Yeah, almost every week. I don't want to say every week. Almost every week we spend time together. Take him out to eat. Either I bring some food, or we go out to eat, and nothing fancy. You know what I'm saying? Get some pizza. I bring some tuna sandwiches from home. Like, nothing crazy. And we spend time together. And sometimes he shares meaningful things, and sometimes he shares not meaningful things. But he's important to me, and he matters, and he knows. And I reach out to my kids and just say, I'm here if you need something. I want you to know that if you want to talk about this, okay. I want you to know that if there's something I'm doing which bothers you, you can tell me. And I keep throwing that invitation. And then I try, to the extent that I'm able to then respond to that. Again, a lot of my kids are older, so it's different with the younger ones. But am I Am I paying attention to how they're doing? Am I in communication with their teachers who are spending many hours with them to hear what their impression is of how they're doing? Am I getting reports from neighbors about, the things they're breaking or not breaking? You know what I'm saying? These are also things to be aware of. I think that many parents, I don't know if I should say most, many parents have a good intuition to how their kid is doing when they're with the child enough to get a feel for what's going on with them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
So
that's quite deep. A
you
lot of
just
people are going to need to look themselves in the mirror on that one.
could be, but
That's the idea, right? That's the idea. And it's an extremely important thing to do, to make sure that like you have an understanding of them. And like you said, at least one parent needs to be in that position to have clarity on what's going on. And the other one needs to be making sure, if one is more involved than the other one, but at least even the one that's not necessarily as intuitive should be speaking to the spouse in order to be getting the information and the updates to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Communication. Be involved in that way. Be aware of what's going on in that way. If my child is acting up, yeah, why? Right? If he or she is not listening, why? Right? If he or she seems overly emotional, but depending on his stage of development, why? What's going on? Am I at least trying to understand? Right? And one of the things that I think is important for people to know also, I was speaking to a friend of mine, also a therapist recently, and he told me, he said such an interesting line. He's like, you can either spend like you could be how do you say it? It's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? You can miss X amount of work and invest X amount of money and put X amount of time into your children, or not do that, and then God forbid the emergencies come up and you have to give 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10x of your time and your money and your attention to your child because you didn't give them what they needed at that time. So I'm not here to be telling anybody how to live their lives or how to set their priorities, or where to set their boundaries. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to do that. I wouldn't even know how to do that. Every person is a world unto themselves. Every family is a world unto themselves. Everyone has to know what's going to work for them. Some people also have a need to be busy with work for many, many, many reasons, legitimate reasons. But are we looking for that balance that can meet the needs of both? And when those needs are clashing, am I really, is my behavior really reflective of my priorities, which have been set based on my values?
Right, and I think that actually goes right into the next question that I had, and we'll open the floor to Q&A right after that. And people, you can start putting into the chat, any questions that you have. But what are some practical strategies that people can use to manage the guilt that they might feel when they feel they're not doing enough at home or maybe even at work?
Often when people feel guilty, alcohol can help assuage feelings a lot. The fact that it's effective in the short term doesn't mean it's a good idea. Yeah, let's pull back
I'm
on that.
so making that a cliff.
Yeah. Emotions are messages. Our emotions are messages from, whether it's from our body, from our subconscious, from our higher selves, however exactly you want to view it, or from any of the three, all of the three. And if we're feeling that, so the question is, what is the message I'm meant to be getting here? Right. So I think when a person is feeling guilty, it's a message of something didn't go right. We need to make adjustments. Right. Our children, I don't believe that they need us to beat ourselves up. I don't believe that they benefit greatly from us feeling bad about ourselves. What our children need is for us to be able to, I heard an amazing line from somebody today. I don't remember wherever he got it from. He told me that there's no such thing as success and failure. All there is results. All I see is results. I did something, I'm looking at the results. If the results are what I was hoping for, then just keep doing what you were doing. If the results are not what you were hoping for, so now you know one thing which is not working. and look for the adjustments that you need to make. It's really easy to feel guilty and to feel bad. I do this sometimes too. And I'm actually quite adept at it. Feeling bad and having regret and wishing things were different. And, I'm awesome at that. And I haven't found that sitting in those feelings has gotten me so far. Acknowledging those feelings, allowing them to run their course. Yes, that's healthy emotionally. And then to say, okay, what can I do differently? How can I do better? And I've had to make that adjustment. I've absolutely made mistakes. I've made big mistakes as a parent. I have, and I've had to own up to those mistakes. I think that depending on the age of the child and the relationship, etc., sometimes it could be appropriate to apologize. But it's always appropriate to really take stock and say, okay, what can I do better? And be realistic also. Don't now go and promise yourself every Sunday I'm spending 5 hours with my kids. There are some people that will end up doing much more damage to their children by doing that than, what I'm saying? Like, be realistic about what you can accomplish. Be realistic about what will be good for you and what will be good for them. But okay, if there's something I'm doing which is not working for my kid, then I need to learn how to adjust that. And maybe I need to learn a little bit more about parenting and learn a little bit more about myself or a little bit more about my child. This is definitely something I've tried to help many people with. Okay, how can we look at ourselves and say, what can I be doing differently? And it's a process I've gone through. I would like to believe that I'm a much better parent today than I was when I started parenting over 22 years ago. And I sincerely hope that I am. If you're doing the same thing for 22 years and you're not getting any better at it, you need to find a new job, right? I'm saying, but there's no finding a new job. I'm a dad. And I don't want to give up this job. I love this job, but I will continue to be my children's father. I'll continue to be my children's father, no matter what. Even if I'm not acting as their father, even if I'm failing as their father, I'm still their father. There's no getting out of that.
Right.
That's just a psychological reality. Great. So if that's true and I care about my children, then I need to make working on myself a priority in order to make sure that I'm giving my kids the best dad, or if you're a mom, best mom that you can be.
Yeah. And I think it's extremely powerful in terms of the fact that a lot of this comes down to being honest with ourselves. It comes down to understanding what's going on inside with the different parts of ourselves that might be feeling a certain way, and taking those emotions, those feelings, those reactions, and now trying to understand them by getting rid of the noise and really breaking it down to what is the message that I'm being told, and then based on that message, is there something I should be doing differently, and what is that? Right? And then going through that process. And I think that it's a very powerful point.
The one thing I'd add, I'm sorry to cut you off for a second, but
go for it.
It can often be very hard to do that on our own. So if our spouse is someone that can help us do that, then that's amazing, right? Maybe we have a friend who can help, who we can share with and who can help us do that. Maybe we have a clergyman, a mentor who can help us do that. And you know what? I mean, listen, obviously I'm a little bit biased here. I don't think there's any shame in therapy. I don't think there's any shame with someone coming and saying, you don't necessarily need to be in therapy for 10 years to come to a professional and say, this is the feedback I'm getting from my kids. Can you help me figure out how I can do this better? And
I would say the opposite. I would say that therapy is for those who are strong. It's not for those who are weak. If you are in a position where you can say, I need help, you are a gladiator.
Yes. That it takes courage. It takes courage. And I think the people who have that courage, the people who are willing to say, I'm struggling with something, help me. Yeah. No, some people, I'm in general, I'm not a huge 10 years of therapy sounds like a lot to me also. But if there's something you're struggling with, there are people who are trained to help people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've never found anyone have any shame going to the dentist. No one ever said to me, a dentist, man, I feel like such a loser going to a dentist. Like, I have not met many people, maybe just because where I'm from, who are ashamed of going to the mechanic. I haven't found that. There are people who are experts in managing emotion, or at least in helping other people manage emotion. Yeah, there are people who are experts in helping people understand themselves better. That's largely what I do as a therapist, just trying to help people understand themselves better, understand what's going on inside, and how do I manage that better. sometimes we're blessed and we merit to help people heal. It's an awesome thing also. But if at the very least I can help somebody better understand what's going on, it's very difficult to manage something you don't understand. Now, again, I'm all for if someone can get what they need. I'm a big fan of minimalist intervention. If you can get what you need from your spouse, by all means. If you can get what you need from a good friend, from a mentor, by all means. You get what you need from a coach, by all means. Whatever you need. A lot of people will have all of those things and still see the tremendous benefit that they can have from going to therapy. But every person, based on their situation, and again, everywhere I look on LinkedIn, everywhere I look, everyone's talking about how, like, without a coach, you can't. Like, how do you expect to get anywhere without a coach? Now, what did people do before coaches? I don't know. Did Rockefeller have a coach? Not sure, right? But a lot of us are, we're not trained to do the things that we're doing. I was trained to be in the position that I'm in as a therapist, right? But if I don't really do sales, but if I needed to do sales, it would make a whole lot of sense for me to speak to somebody like Yaacov Steinberg and say, like, I was never trained. I never learned this. It doesn't come to me intuitively. I don't necessarily know how to do this.
Definitely shouldn't be beating yourself up for that.
Yeah. Why should I feel bad about the fact, you know what I'm saying? Like, I am old enough that it's okay if I don't understand everything about technology. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing wrong with turning to my 15-year-old and asking for help. You know what I'm saying? Like, and my kids are relatively sheltered. But I'm saying, like, my 15-year-old takes my phone, he can't unlock it because he doesn't have my thumb, right? But, like, if I unlock my phone for him, that kid is like, like, okay, so if he's better at it than me, then get the help, like, that's, so if we'll do it for our business, and I recommend it for people, so then let's do it for our lives too.
100%. Love that. So there's one last question that I want to go through over here, which is, how can we model a healthy work-life balance for our kids so that they can grow up with the right mindset? And I think that to a certain degree, we've answered through the different questions that we've gone through today and the different answers that you've given. I think that there's a lot that we've already done. I'm curious if I'm missing anything on this, but I would believe, just taking a stab at this myself, that it really comes down to the way that we act. It comes down to the values, the priorities, and the behaviors that we are modeling to them, that we are going to show to them when we pick up the phone, look at it, put it down, and say, I'm with you right now. You're important to me. Right? Those are the ways that we're going to show them, because more than the words that we say, it's the actions that we take. Right? Follow not the actions that I do, follow what I say is great. It doesn't really work very well in parenting at all. No. Not at all. Because ultimately, if you tell me that you love me and then consistently you show me that you, and I feel that you don't, I'm going to feel what I feel. As much as you tell me the opposite, it's not going to help.
100%. I think the real, like you said, we are modeling for our kids all the time. And we have to understand that they see just about everything. They hear just about everything. They smell it. They can sense it. Especially younger children, it's not about what's going on here. They can feel things. It's going on inside their heart. So we have to recognize that where we're at is they're gonna see it. And if we can, like you said, we can be claiming all sorts of things. If our behavior is showing otherwise, and that's what they're going to see, and that's what they're really going to be learning from. The one other thing that we could think about, though, is being intentional and explicit. We can actually talk to our kids about these things. I often talk to my kids about my values, about how I attempt to prioritize. I'll talk to them about how I struggle sometimes. I'll be honest with them about it. Again, for children that I think are mature enough to handle, there are sometimes my younger kids, I'm sorry, I have to go to work now. The older ones, we'll talk about maybe why. We'll talk about why we do some of the things we do, or how I wish I had done. I said to my kids recently, they just had like a short break, I guess call it like a midwinter break, a Hanukkah break. And I worked less on Hanukkah. I realized I made a mistake. I really should have taken a day or two completely off and prioritized my boys, and like they're home. They generally have very heavy schedules. I should have gone up north with them, done something with them. And I said to my two older boys, I apologize. I think I should have taken better care of you. And I think that tells them that it's okay to be human. It's okay to make mistakes. You can own up on your mistakes. And you guys, I'm realizing now that I could have done better, and I'm really going to try to do that next time. And that's showing them how to have that focus also. And they see, one of the things that I've learned as my children have gotten older is that the things that are really important to us, they pick up on it. They really do.
Yeah, for sure. This has been absolutely amazing. I have 2 pages of notes. I always like to point out at the end of every single one of these podcasts, if you are like me and have a page, 2 pages of notes, whatever it is, there are so many things that even I myself could go ahead and start trying to fix tomorrow, today, and the next minute as soon as we finish this podcast. But if I try to do everything at once, the likelihood of me tripping, falling down, breaking my nose is quite high. So I would suggest for each and every person here, take things slow. Pick one thing from today that really moved you. Choose that one thing, start putting it into implementation, and take your time. Go slowly. I told you at the beginning of this podcast that there was going to be a special offer at the end. Eliav, tell us a little bit about what you had in mind. And in the meantime, I'm going to put your contact information into the chat.
Okay, great. So I think people who either are or will be listening to this are probably people who are parents who are trying to find this balance, or trying to work on this, and my friends who are looking for things to make fun of me about. But aside from those people who are actually here to gain value and not just to tease me, I would imagine that they might have some questions. There might be some areas where they could be struggling with this, and I would invite them. They can reach out to me, direct message me on LinkedIn, and if there's a way that I can be helpful, I would really love to do that. I really like to help people, and there's a very decent chance that we can have, just DMing back and forth, or a very brief conversation, and I'll be happy to do that, just to, give people a little bit more, to let them learn from some of the experience that I have, if they would find value in that.
Absolutely amazing. I know that the 2 of us have had such conversations, and they have been not just valuable, but life-changing, to say the least.
Wow.
And my kids thank you for sure, although they don't know about you, but they definitely thank you. That being said, myself, we do these live podcasts and we speak about things that are timely, interesting, things that you can add to your skill set toolbox. If there was something on this podcast or just in general that you had questions, even for myself, about, you can always feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be in the description, as well as it's in the chat. And if you feel like there's something that for the 2 of us to talk about more in depth, you could feel free to schedule time for a 30-minute free strategy call. They do go quickly, so grab them while they're hot. And Eliav, I just want to say thank you again for everyone listening, for myself. This has been truly impactful. We greatly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And to everyone else who's here or listening, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. And until next time.